Ford CEO panics because they can't sell these cars anymore. They literally have to give them away. While the CEO, Jim Farley, is saying, this is a very, very worrying time. We cannot sell vehicles like the Mustang Mach-E. They've seen 20% price cuts, and as well, on Tuesday, Ford announced that they were going to implement another 8% price cut. Now, while they're directly competing with the likes of the Tesla Model Y, but they're looking down the barrel of the fact that Chinese BYD companies are trying to knock on the back door and bust their way in, forcing these companies like Ford to become ultra competitive. But customers aren't buying. Nobody wants to buy these vehicles, and as a result, the Mustang Mach-E sales are literally suffering. And when we look at Cox Automotive latest research, we see that the average day's supply of vehicles across the industry is about 74 days, where Ford is up around 101 days supply. Ford's CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, John Lawler, is also worried about vehicles piling up on dealers' lots. They're clearly not selling. And as I do a scrummage, I basically pull up a statistic. I go check the new car inventory across the entire US and Canadian supply, where I find nationwide inventory is piling up. And when I do a search, I break this down to vehicles that have been sitting over 500 days on the market. The list is actually quite extensive and very worrisome. So clearly there's a lot of vehicles that have been sitting around for a year, 2 years, even 3 years sitting on the lot. I even see brand new 2021 still lingering out there. People aren't buying them. Lawler also stressed the need for diligent, careful progress throughout the year. And this is going to be a constant evolution of pricing. And unfortunately, all on the backs and the hides of the buyers. His comments appear that additional cuts could be coming this year to the EV market. And while Ford has had a tremendous year in selling some of their full-size trucks, although they're still on a year-over-year on a decline, the Mavericks, the smaller trucks that are priced in the $30,000 range, seem to be selling a lot better. Even though they're not truly trucks, they're really built more on a unibody platform, something a little bit more soft. But for people that just need to do a little bit of light hauling and just want the practicality of having a small pickup truck with an open box, the Maverick seems to be fitting the bill for a lot of customers, as well as the hybrid specifically adds another level of not just complexity but as well as economy, and that seems to satisfy the need for most buyers because people can no longer afford full-size trucks. Sales have been dropping, although with some of the hybrid vehicles on their Escapes as well as their Mavericks, those are the vehicles typically selling the most. The larger SUVs, the larger trucks have been on a sliding scale, and even worse, the electric vehicle market is taking a hit. Now, the Lightning we saw take punishing abuse. They're not selling well either, but it is the best-selling electric pickup truck. How many are there? Rivian, Tesla, Ford? I mean, who's building electric trucks these days? So it's not really much a feat to say that they're top pops, when in fact it's still a very small market share. But the Lightning, good. Look on the used car market. They are a losing proposition, and Ford knows this. So they've had to price their electric vehicles in a very competitive place. So the CFO is actually quoting, "It worries me that the stocks are still building. We haven't seen that impact so far, but we are watching it very closely." And while Ford's gas-powered vehicles have seen about 11% increase year over year, that's the only thing holding them together, because their electric division, their E-division, is taking a real abusive hit. They're literally hemorrhaging money. And the only thing keeping the electric vehicle division going are the sales of their brand new vehicles, which a big part of that are their fleets and commercial sales, which again are the only thing that really keeping this whole organization afloat. If it weren't for the commercial sales, it would be no more. And the CFO has reported, with 20% discounts already seen on some of these EVs, that the only solution might be continued evolution and increases of those incentives. We need to push people in a way that they feel like they want to buy it, like they feel like they want to do it because it makes sense financially. Maybe it fits their personal life experiences or whatever they need. But at the end of the day, range anxiety is real. Charging station networks are real. And the fact that those are all limitations, there has to be other incentives in place. And that really comes down to finances. Of course, we know interest rates are still holding strong and the cost of living crisis is real. So if people are going out there and spending their hard-earned dollars on a vehicle that they can barely afford to begin with, they're going to do something more on a surefire, something that they know and they respect and they trust. And not something that's a nice-to-have pet project like an electric vehicle. They'd rather go something more internal combustion. And according to Lawler, when you look at this year and you've seen the cost reductions that we've seen in place, the question is is this pricing all going to stabilize? Or are we going to continue to see this downward pressure on the top line? I like how they use the phrase on the top line, because this is what we're talking about, our profits. And us as the consumer want to know what the bottom line is. What is the cost? And while we hear all this noise about production costs and manufacturing costs, at the end of the day, the bottom line is what we concern ourselves with. The top line is the number between the top and the bottom line. That's their profits. We want to get the bottom line deal. We're looking for value for our money. And that's the big question, why people are not buying these vehicles, because they don't feel like they're getting the bottom line deal on some of these new Mustang Mach-E's. And Jim Farley was also saying that they don't want to commoditize these particular vehicles, any of these electric vehicles. Because the unfortunate part is the people that got in a little earlier paid top dollar, and now with all these incentives just to get into brand new, these folks are way behind the eight ball. They've seen so much negative equity and depreciation from their new vehicles because of these price adjustments that it's enough to choke a horse. And sadly, it's almost insult to injury to those buyers who got on a little ahead of the game of a year, 2, 3 years ago. And while Ford hasn't totally gone away from electric vehicles, they know they have to continue manufacturing these vehicles because that seems to be, according to some experts, that seems to be the growing trend for the future. But the reality is most people just want an internal combustion engine for reliability. They just know what to expect. Charging networks, the cost of buying new as well as maintenance ongoing. Or what does that depreciation look for most electric vehicles? Not good. That's why people trust with the internal combustion engines. And this is where this leaves vehicles like the Mustang Mach-E, a very unpopular vehicle that's clearly not selling. And the only thing sells it are strong incentives. But with that said, Ford chose to build a new electric vehicle manufacturing near Memphis, Tennessee, in part because that region has cleaner energy from hydro as well as nuclear facilities. Ford at this point plans to train those workers and continue ongoing training to make sure that they have the latest and greatest so that the concerns of quality and challenges with quality control that we've seen in Ford in recent years hopefully becomes less of an issue. The last thing people need are a vehicle that's extremely hard to maintain, it's hands-off, it's electric, the technology's out of this world, and then if you incorporate a level of unreliability, that's enough to make people not want to buy these. Clearly, these vehicles are not selling, and it's doing it all by its lonesome. People don't want these expensive batteries that are known to go up like a tinderbox, known to be very expensive when they need to be fixed or replaced, because even a small nick or a scuff sometimes writes them off. And then the overall depreciation electric vehicle is absolutely brutal. Just ask Mercedes on the EQS, just ask Porsche on the Taycan, or just ask Audi on the Audi e-tron GT. How bad things can get on the depreciation market. So when people even want to think about buying these, they're now looking a little bit more in the used car market because they can get that brand new one, a year old, 10,000 miles on it, and they get it for 50% off discount. So that's where people are starting to spend their money, and the sales of these brand new EVs just aren't there. So further price slashes are a clear indicator that people aren't looking for these vehicles. And Jim Farley is literally panicking as he increases more of these incentives and watch people slowly eke their way back into the dealerships to sign on the dotted line. The fact remains is very few people are out there really looking for that type of vehicle. And with all of that said, what's going on? It's not just those vehicles, but people are actually refusing to buy cars and trucks. They're too expensive. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.